Hi, it's Alexander Russo from The Grade, and this is the Education Show. And I'm so happy to be here with Doraian Givens, who is one of the students described in the new book, Miracle Children, just out a few days ago. Doraian, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's nice having you or having me. Thank you for having me.
For people who might not know you, who haven't yet read the book or don't remember the stories that came out all those years ago, can you give us the three-sentence version of who you are and what you're up to now?
Sure. So, if you read the book, I'm the student who transferred to TM Landry her senior year because she wanted to go to Juilliard to play the viola and become a conductor. Um, I was promised that I would be able to go to Juilliard before I transferred. Got there, they said, "We don't know about that. We can get you to New York." In the end, I ended up attending New York University. I graduated from there, and after I went to law school, and I graduated from law school in Florida.
Excellent. And now you're out in the world.
Yes, I'm out in the world. Just trying to use my law degree.
I didn't know about the conducting part. My dad was a composer and a conductor. That's amazing that you wanted to do that. I never aspired to anything musical, but that's cool that you wanted to conduct.
Yeah. I started music probably when I was like 3 years old with the piano, and then I picked up the violin when I went to elementary school at J. Wallace James because I thought it was a funny looking instrument.
Uh-huh.
And my family, my parents, especially my mom, had a rule of once you start, you can't quit. So I continued it all the way through high school.
You and I met a week and change ago at the Upper West Side book reading that Erica Green and Katie Benner gave to tell people in New York City about the book. Can you go back and tell me what it was like being there?
Yeah, sure. So I met Erica and Katie a long time ago. So it was actually nice seeing them, familiar faces, and walking into the space. Um, and it was very welcoming. They were both very welcoming. And it was just interesting to hear some of the others' questions about like what was going on, and expectations that they had of the book and the purpose of the book.
Right.
Yeah, but overall, it was a great experience. Like, I was so happy to see Erica because we have been trying to meet up with each other, but we would be in the same cities, but different days. So it was nice meeting up.
Am I right that you're more in the book than you were in the original story? I know you were in the video, the documentary that they made. Which are you most in?
So I was a part of the weekly. I believe that came out in 2021.
2019, 2020? Yeah.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah.
My story was largely incorporated in that story. I do know that there was a documentary that also came out. I haven't watched that documentary.
Right.
And now I'm in the book. So I think my story has been on and off. I don't know if I'm in the documentary or not. I haven't watched it, which is probably something I need to do. But yeah.
How do you feel about being such a big part of the book? You're one of the main characters. You're one of the main kids, if I can use that term, whose story is told in the book. Is it excruciating? Is it a release? What's it like?
Well, it's a little mixed. So it's kind of funny because, there's some parts where going over it, I remember going over this with Erica, like there was a line where I was speaking about another student who was a prospective student. Her name was Madison Andrus.
Right.
And I called her bitter. And I remember that situation. Well, I don't remember calling her bitter. And I told Erica that. I'm like, I don't remember I called her that. However, I wouldn't put it past me. So especially at that age, I was like, yeah, like that would probably be something I would say. So that part, you kind of laugh. And then it's like, my boyfriend, for example, he didn't know like the full story because, it's a lot.
Right.
So the book was nice to be able to be like, here's a snippet of like what's going on. Like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you that part. And then just kind of seeing like, oh yeah, I do remember this, and just, reliving the story in terms of as they were writing it. And finally seeing the final product was pretty cool.
Would you say that overall the depiction of your experience is faithful accurate, complete, all those things by and large?
Yeah, overall, I would say it's pretty complete. Like, they definitely got the part where Mike and Tracy were yelling, having to sit in meetings for 2 hours, taking tests in the rain,
Right.
um, just the shenanigans that they put us through.
And
And
being
of course, like, it's impossible to capture everything that happened, but I think it covered a good chunk of it.
right. And they captured the bait and switch of getting you to come to TM Landry and then saying, "What's Juilliard? There's no way
Yeah.
it's going to happen." That's
Yeah. And then, a lot of people kind of question, like, well, how did this situation happen? And I think the book is a great start to that conversation of how it happened.
right.
Um, in terms of, yeah, there was a bait and switch, and people don't really consider, one, it was my senior year. So
Right.
what options did I have in terms of, do I transfer back to my old school? It's only a year, it doesn't really make any sense. And then I don't remember if the book covered this part, but like there were a lot of threats that were made. Like if you did attempt to try and transfer to another school, um, Mike specifically would make threats like, "Oh, I'm going to mess up your transcript so badly that they're going to put you in second grade, or they're going to demote you so much
Mhm.
further down
Right.
that it'll be kind of impossible." And they're the ones who are quite literally over everything, because even though it wasn't a real school, they still kind of they had to be the ones to submit the paperwork, and nobody knew that at the time.
Right. Looking uh, looking back, is there anything that the book did? Is there any important moment or important truth that the book or the weekly didn't get to? There's something that you just really wish had been in there. You don't have to say yes. It's. But I always like to ask people: is there anything that's missing for you?
Yeah, and I think so. What it is something that it's like more of my opinion, and it's something that I've grown with as a thought over time. And this is requires me to have time to look back. So it's really, and also dealing with my community. A lot of people, when this story broke, said, "Oh, they're just trying to tear another black man down," and I don't think the book captured like the historical importance of how we got to that point, but I don't think people take into consideration like this black man was also tearing down black children, black little girls, black little boys who would grow up to become adults. Um, and that was a thought that didn't really cross anyone's mind. So I did wish that was said, but I also don't think I fully expressed that thought process. So it's no fault on their own. I just think it's something that I also had to like mentally figure out how to communicate.
Meaning, when the story came out, um, uh, there was not necessarily approval of the expose. There was resentment or resistance or disbelief. I know
Yes.
I know that Erica was a little nervous about going back down there to see what people might have to say. Maybe that's part of what she was describing.
Yeah. So part of the school, like a good chunk of the school was related to them. And also you're taught like growing up, like as black people, you have to grow together, you have to support each other. And when a situation like this, it can be seen like you're tearing down someone in the community who's helped so many children. Um, and people do get upset with that. And I think there is some validity in being upset. Like, what do you mean this man was helping all these children? But again, that kind of goes to, one, did they read the entire story?
Right.
And two, like, at what cost does it take for someone tearing children down versus uplifting a community? And then what is the definition of being uplifted? Because for some people, being at home is exactly what they want. For me, that I knew that wasn't what I wanted. I've always said that since I was 5. But for other people, that's exactly what they wanted. Not everyone just wants to leave. So I think sometimes people didn't put a lot of thought into what the situation was, the impact it had, who it had an impact on, and what people really wanted.
What was it like for you back before everything was known? What was it like for you seeing or being around some of the what I'm going to call the hype, the TV shows, the news coverage, the celebration?
Yeah.
What was that like for you as a kid?
So I remember I remember my acceptance video going viral, and I believe it was in a magazine called Jet Magazine or Essence. It was in one of the two. And it was a magazine that my grandmother read, and that made me very happy. And if you know anything about my story, my grandmother plays a huge part in my life. I'm partially named after her. And for me, that was like a great moment because I knew my grandmother got to brag about me, especially her being like so big into education. And then, as time went on, like people kind of forget it's viral moments happen and then they disappear. That's normal. That's part of the news cycle. When the news story broke on the front page of the New York Times, I remember getting a call from one of my friends who is also in the book, Alex. And we were on a group call and we were talking about like, oh, this story is about to break. I remember sitting in the hallway of my dorm crying because I'm like, oh, this is going to be a lot of pressure. Then my dean called me, and then another like associate dean called me, and they're like, do not go to class today because some of my fellow classmates from TM Landry were receiving death threats. They had to figure out like what that meant for us in terms of our education because, well, now it's come out that we don't have a real high school diploma. So does that even mean that we get to go to school? So that process was very stressful.
Mm.
But thankfully, my school, NYU, was a great support system in that way. My friends and family were also a great support system in that way. But at the same time, I was also concerned about my family because, as I said in the book, my older sister also went to that school. And a lot of my dad's friends' children went to that school. And I also consider them like my babies, like they're my little siblings, because I'm the oldest, and so I've always seen them as like literally as siblings. Um, and just watching them go through it, it's like a lot to take on because as an older sibling, you kind of feel the duty like, oh, I got to take care of this kid. I have to take care of my sister. I have to take care of my brother. So,
Did the school, the deans, the professors, advisors, the adults at the school, did they have to go through a whole process where they were coming to terms with the fact that some of the things on the application and some of the things that they thought about the school were not the way they thought they were? Did they put you through the ringer about that stuff?
no, thankfully, I was one. But I do know that some other people did have to go through that. Like they went through panels to determine whether or not they should have stayed at their respective universities.
Hmm.
But I didn't, thankfully, because of the university I attended. NYU has international students, a large population. So they're like, well, we kind of have different guidelines for that, anyways, because not everyone has the standard U.S. education. People come in late. Some people don't come in. Um, or they come in early, or they just come in with something that we're not used to having. So they're like, it's fine. And then, not to mention, I do have like a real transcript. I did go to a real high school, and that was easily accessible for me to show them if they ever wanted it, but they didn't question it.
Right. When the story first came out, the New York Times cover story, I was really mad at my people who are the journalists
Hmm.
because it seemed to me, and this is all Monday morning quarterbacking, so set me straight, but it seemed to me that yet again the media had sort of done what the schools had done and taken these stereotypical sob stories, right? Some of which were flimsy. The Mandarin, for example, um, some of the course listing on transcripts. I'm not talking
Hmm.
about yours in particular. I was like, come on now, journalists, couldn't you have asked a couple questions? And I'm wondering, so that this, not so that you didn't get to go to a school you wanted to go to, but just so that this whole cycle of disbelief and stereotype didn't get, hammered in again. I'm just curious, did you think when it was happening or after it happened, did you think, hey, the journalists could have asked some questions?
No, because I think journalists asking questions is what led to the situation. And the thing is Mike in particular, but Tracy included, are two very manipulative people. There was a teacher teaching Mandarin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there was a teacher teaching Mandarin, but there was no credits for it, and students weren't really learning anything.
Yeah.
Um, And so, or he would send us to something as relates to like UL, or what would happen is he would take things from our past and try and include them as it relates to sob stories. A lot of us did push back on it. I know I did in particular. I'm like, I grew up in a middle class family with two loving parents in my household. I don't know what this sob story is. I come from a long lineage of higher education. So, and I think that's kind of what cracked the story. On top of students are finally, and former students were able to be like, hey, like this is going on, like you need to pay attention to this. So I think they did ask questions. It's just, you also have to take in consideration that the sources were a little scared because he did threaten.
Right.
And if you're just taking a quick look, it looks like everything is there. Because if you look at like TM Landry at one point was technically a school, but it was like a homeschool, I guess.
Right.
So the paperwork was there. So even parents, like they have parents for like, oh yeah, here's like a flash of a paper. You know, it's kind of like the way I'd like to describe it is like a fake ID or an expired ID, right? It's like, yeah, this is a legit ID, but it's old and expired, but it's real.
Right. I asked Katie and Erica about this question of like media culpability, because they only got the story because of a tip, right? They didn't ask questions. Erica's the first one to say, "Hey, I've shared those videos delightfully, just like everyone else did, and I may have too." She said that the reason, and I'm curious what you think about this. She said that the reason that journalists didn't ask questions is that if they did, and she cited the instance of one journalist who did, that they were accused of trying to tear down the accomplishments of kids. I guess there was a CBS News reporter who, before the expose, said, this seems a little bit far-fetched. This is amazing, but this is hard to believe. She said that he got back down, and that she felt like there was a lot of tentativeness on the part of journalists, that the journalists didn't want to unintentionally hurt the kids who were going through the program, who were by and large innocent, or to give people ammunition for stereotypes about academic ability or authenticity. What do you think about that? Does that bring up anything for you?
I think that it is two-folded. Like it's true that people definitely needed to investigate and, children are involved. And it's not like just high schoolers are involved. Like this was K through 12, right? Like, so you had little kids and parents, and releasing something like that definitely disrupted our lives for the better or worse. It disrupted our lives. At the same time, it's like that needed to be said and it needed to be published because truth is, fact of the matter, they were physically and mentally abusing students. Like that's not okay. It's never okay. So at some point you have to weigh out the cost of it. And of course there's going to be pushback. And I think that's something all journalists should know, is like you're going to have pushback the moment, not even if you say your opinion, but if you say something that may particularly rub the crowd the wrong way. But that's something that journalists, I feel like, will have to figure out on like within their self, whether or not they're willing to deal with the repercussions, or as I like to say, consequences, which aren't necessarily bad, but it's just a reaction of what has been done.
Right. Speaking of what journalists should do, the grade, the newsletter that I put out, is all about education and journalism, and the idea is to help give people who write about schools, who write about kids and parents and teachers, a reality check about the impact of what they do, some real world ideas about what they might consider doing differently or might do the next time. So this is not your field of expertise, except that you've lived through it. Is there anything that you would want a journalist in 2026 or in some year in the future who comes across a situation like this, anything that you would want them to do or not do that you've experienced or seen done? Is there any advice or insight you can share for education reporters and editors who might have to see a situation like this again?
Yeah, for the first things first is like get as much as you can. You don't have to have everything, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, it's okay to contact authorities because I know it seems a little scary, but you have to remember you are dealing with children.
Right.
And then I would also say that, let's see, I'm trying to figure out how to word this. Children are unique, they're a part of our society, and it is very important to take care of them. And if they're in an abusive situation, which you can easily see, be there. Don't just be a journalist who just is there for the story. Then that's one thing I appreciate about Erica and Katie is that they've been there. Like they know they check in on me. Like I said, we try and meet up just to catch up because we do need that support system. And if you're gonna go into a story like this, you have to understand they're gonna need a support system, and it's not just a system that's gonna last for a month or two while the story is going on. Because at the end of the day, it in fact impacts these children, which later we become adults,
Right.
for the rest of their lives. And you have to keep in mind that a story isn't just something that you're going to put out to be famous or for credit or for money. It's your job is to tell a story, an accurate story, but make sure that the damage you're doing / the benefits that you're doing match up and actually have some moral standing behind it.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you wished I'd asked you, or that I asked you and that you wished I really hadn't? Sometimes when I talk to people, I realize that I've missed something important, and I always like to ask people whether there's anything that they want to say that I haven't gotten to, or that I asked the wrong way.
Um, I one thing I don't think you've asked yet is about parents.
Okay.
Um, like I know it'd probably be best to interview a parent, but I don't think anyone knows a parent better than their own children. I always say it's hard raising parents. Um, so, and their take on the situation, because this is a conversation I have all the time with my mom and my dad.
Mm.
They're like, "Well, how come you didn't tell us?" And the answer is very simple. One, we were in school from 7 a.m. to like 2 a.m. So by the time I got home, I was tired. I did not want to speak. Two, there were threats. And not to think that my parents wouldn't take those threats very seriously. In fact, you know, my parents are very protective. I love them to pieces, but I also know my parents, right? And then three, when you're in something, you don't realize you're in it until you're out of it. And there are moments that I realize, like with some of my friends, like Alex, Ayrton, where we'd be on like calls and we're just talking, we're like, this is like the definition of a cult. And then we literally look at the definition of a cult. And we're like, yeah, we have to wear uniforms. They didn't want us to talk to anyone. They had a weird saying. Mike compared himself to Jesus. So it's one of those things where, like, for parents and students, like, how did you not realize that? And that's a question I think a lot of people don't really ask. And the answer is because when you're in it, you don't realize it. There's threats going on and everything else. So yeah, I don't think people tend to ask that question. Or if they do, not enough for it to be broadcasted.
Right. They don't realize that what seems obvious after the fact might not have seemed obvious or speakable until it was. Yeah. That's really interesting and really important. Thank you for telling me that. And thank you so much for talking to me and sharing your insights with education reporters and editors. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Of course. Thank you for having me.